Welcome back, guys. So in this video we're going to start continuing with level design. So one thing I do want to start off with is moving the character, because I want him to start the scene somewhere back here. So let's select the camera, we'll press W to move, and then we'll move him somewhere around here. And also what I want to do is orientate the divider to be 90 degrees facing the other direction. So we'll hit E and rotate this way. And what I can now do is press W and let's move it closer to the actor. And we can actually do what we want to do for the style. You don't have to follow me if you don't want to, but the way that the assembly works is you might want to pay attention for the first part, and it starts off with the trim next to the divider. So we have the top trim here, which is trim number 2, and we have trim number 1 right over here. So the trim sits on top of, the floor panel, which doesn't really matter right now because the floor panel is going to be exactly where the floor is. So just orientate this trim 1 to be right here, and then we'll grab any wall panel. So it doesn't have to be this wall panel, it can be either one, and we'll line it up to be on top of the trim. So something like this. And we actually want to move this a bit further back, so I can change this. And I want to get rid of this snapping that it's doing, so I'll turn off the grid. So when I move it now, I have free room, and I want this to have a little bit of spacing. And then I'll add the trim at the top. So trim 2 will be at the top, right above the panel. So it goes trim, panel, trim. So once you get that, figured out, you'll be square. You just line this up a bit better. That looks good. Now we can start patterning this to go the same way, or we can actually just duplicate it. But first, let's move this divider a little bit closer so we can actually see this a bit better. So what we can do is select all 3 of these, both the trim and the panel, and we can hold Alt while moving this by dragging the arrow, and we can duplicate it. So what we're going to be doing is duplicating this down to create the hall. So hold Alt and drag the arrow to create duplicates. So that's how you set that up. So I'm going to Control Z to get rid of that. I was just using it as an example, because what I want to do is grab the trim, hold Alt, and slide it over like this. And I want to grab the second panel, or it can be a window, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to put this next to this panel. And this is also why I made the panels the same height and measurements, so they can coincide with each other a lot easier. The first one is always a little bit difficult to set up because you don't have any reference point. But once you have it, you're squared. And it's okay if there's a little bit of spacing in between. So if I move that one, I have to move the top because these two are together. And remember, you can change the pivot by holding Alt. So I can hold Alt and middle mouse press to change the pivot so I can move it in a better spot. And it's temporary unless you lock it, and we learned how to do that in the last video. So this looks good for the wall pattern. So I'll grab the trim and the wall at the same time by holding Shift and selecting them, then I'll hold Alt and resume with creating the patterns. And I can make this go any way I want. That looks fine. There's no overlap. If you get overlap and it starts shaking like it is here, it's because they're overlapping. So you might need to move it a little further away. See, you got rid of the shaking. And don't worry about the light just yet. We'll worry about the light in the next couple of videos. I just want to show you guys how to create the pattern. So once we have that, later we can start adding the, the keypad. We'll grab a keypad. Press F to frame a location to get closer to the object. Remember, we learned that in the first video. Notice how this is a lot bigger than expected. So we can downscale that by pressing R and choosing the middle. And then we can just downscale that as we need fit or see fit. Then press W to move it. And we can hit F to zoom in. And that actually looks pretty good. And we can change that. Don't be constrained to, we're just doing the block out right now. And typically we do a thing called white boxing. And we get the general shape and direction of the level, but we just didn't do it this time because we already had the correct measurements. So now what I'll do is create my doorway. And there's something about the doorway that I want to explain to you guys after we finish adding it. And remember, just drag and press Alt and hold Alt to do a duplication. And then we can add windows and such. So if I want to replace one of these with a window, I can just delete it and drag the window to be in that location. If that makes any sense. And we can make it bigger, and we can always work like this. And this is how we probably should have been working. Might have been a little bit easier. I'm gonna dial this a bit further back. And if you ever want to deselect or hide anything, you can press G to get rid of the selection so you can see how it looks. And this looks pretty good for, a little segment, as well as the side over here. And you see how this fits perfectly in here without needing trim to be on the bottom. So with this direction, you guys can take this anywhere you want as far as location wise. And we still have the door in the back. So let's deal with this door really quick so you guys can see what we want to do with that. So let's bring this a little bit closer. And what I want to do is rotate this 90 degrees. So I'll press E and then I'll just rotate this by 90 degrees so it's straight up. And we want to just position this to be behind this door or inside this doorway. Bring it up. Slide this way. Bring it up a little higher. And what we also want to do is press Alt and drag to duplicate it, and we'll rotate this 180 degrees. It's 180 degrees. Now we'll press W, and then we'll just move it down. Bring it up a little higher. And now, if we deselect by pressing G, you see we have that doorway. That we can easily open the doors as we see fit by dragging them this way or one this way. And I think this is good for this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.